Welcome to Good for Bitcoin, a weekly show recorded live every Friday, where we recap the top events of the week and talk about everything that is good for Bitcoin. If it's built on Bitcoin, then it's good for Bitcoin. Let's get started.
Content shared on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute financial, investment, or legal advice. The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and do not reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, or company. We encourage you to conduct your own research and consult with a qualified professional before making any financial decisions.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Good for Bitcoin. It's been another very exciting week. We have so much to get into. My name is Brandon, social media manager for Trust Machines. We also have Kate, who is behind the leather handle. Kate, happy Friday.
GM, happy Friday.
And Longstreet, happy Friday, sir.
GM, Brandon, Kate, how we doing today? Happy Friday.
Pretty good, and we have so much to get into. Gosh, what a historic week for Bitcoin it was, especially with Stacks Nakamoto launching. It's here. It's happened already. It's crazy to think that Stacks Nakamoto is now in the past. Really amazing, exciting week. Also, it was Halloween yesterday. Sean, do you guys celebrate Halloween over there?
It's not as big of a deal as it is in America, but they definitely celebrate Halloween here. You don't know it because, like, in the States, you know it's Halloween because of the stores. Like, you walk in, basically, I don't know how early you start celebrating, like, selling into Halloween, but it's not as obvious and over the top here. Like, there's some Halloween candy at the front, but it's not like these massive stands celebrating, pushing people to buy and prepare for Halloween. But definitely you'll see kids walking around in costumes. Oh, they're super cute costumes, kids walking around, and yeah, we celebrate it.
No Spirit Halloweens that open up at like closed, stores, closed Bed Bath and Beyonds.
Yeah, exactly. No pop-up Halloween stores.
Yeah. Well, it was Halloween, and it was also, of course, the 16th anniversary of the Bitcoin white paper, which was published on the 31st in 2009. So we did a few things actually to kind of celebrate the white paper anniversary. We did a little deep dive on the Trust Machines account on, specifically when you look at the white paper, Satoshi cites or references 8 things in his white paper, and wanted to briefly talk about what those 8 references actually were. And I think it's interesting to sort of look at, what inspired Satoshi to make Bitcoin. A lot of times you'll hear, especially from kind of the Bitcoin maxi side, that Bitcoin is sort of this immaculate conception kind of thing. And it's just not the case. I mean, Bitcoin is definitely, Bitcoin created, many new things. Like the blockchain was kind of one of the bigger sort of unlocks, that Satoshi created with Bitcoin. But the cryptography and a lot of the technology that powers Bitcoin actually goes back decades. And it's really cool to take a look and honor some of the, pioneers of cryptography and of a lot of this technology that inspired Bitcoin through this thread. So we'll get that posted, but really cool to go check it out. And we also, Sean, I see you pinned it here, the history of today, which is the Bitcoin logo was created. So exactly 1 year and 1 day after the white paper was published, the Bitcoin logo, the orange Bitcoin logo that we all know and love, was created. So there was two variations of the logo originally made by Satoshi. The first one was sort of this gold coin with this like golden gradient on the coin that said BC on it for Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin, I think, originally was not one word even. It was like 2 words. It was just called Bitcoin. And then after a while, it was changed. So it still had sort of the gold coin kind of gradient. But then it adopted kind of the B $B that we're all kind of familiar with now. And then BitBoy, who actually his name is Phil Wilson, who posted this really amazing blog post outlining exactly how he created it and why he created it. Created this new Bitcoin logo that we all kind of use now and sort of take for granted, but it was just this one person that had created it 15 years ago today. So pretty cool post. Go check that out to learn the history of the Bitcoin logo. It's pretty cool stuff. And I think Sean dropped off. Hopefully he will be able to return. But yeah, we'll we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Kate, I would love to hear, maybe while we're waiting for Sean to come back, a little bit about how Leather Lounge went yesterday, because that was a really fun one.
Yeah, that one was definitely very cool. So we had Natasha, Post Wook, and Erin, who are both, I guess I would consider them to be astronomers within the Bitcoin world. But they're both have had like very cool art projects that they've launched. Which was like both of their artworks are very cool. So Postwook basically created this project with inspired by her father, who is also an astronomer at NASA, and she used a lot of like different techniques to like create her artworks with inscriptions and rare sats. And yeah, that was really cool. Sean, I'm sure that you have a lot to say about this, so please chime in whenever you want. But yeah, it was a very, very cool episode. And what I loved most about it is I really like when people have passions outside of Bitcoin and then can bring them within the Bitcoin space or apply Bitcoin to them. Because I just think that brings so many more people who might have been, who might have a passion for astrology and now they have like a bridge to Bitcoin. So I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, I agree. And Sean, hopefully you're back now and can hear us.
Can you hear me back?
Yes.
I'm back now.
Yeah, we can hear you. I think Sean, it was actually you that brought up the point that Bitcoiners tend to be very skeptical of many things, right? And it's very interesting how astrology in particular has kind of broken through what you would otherwise think Bitcoiners wouldn't really care too much about. And to Kate's point, I think it's just, we really feel the passion and, the commitment that people like Erin and Natasha have on the subject. And it just makes us want to kind of stop and listen and be intrigued and interested. So it was a really cool conversation. Sean, I don't know if you want to add on to the conversation yesterday.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was having Wi-Fi issues, so I missed the beginning of the conversation. But yeah, to your point, it was another interesting point was Erin's introduction to Bitcoin, because I think for a lot of people, it's either they found out about it because of like the number go up technology and they're looking for an investment, or I was buying drugs on Silk Road. So that's how I got Bitcoin. But Erin's process was much more from like an idealistic perspective, where she was wanting to lean into this like age of Aquarius, new Earth, the new way that the people are moving into the age of Aquarius. And so she was interested in like the Bitcoin ethos, don't trust, verify, the decentralization aspect of it, the new technology aspect of it. So she started doing more research then. And I liked her point that astrology is like a technical analysis for girls.
yeah. Astrology is like TA for crypto bros. I love that joke. Yeah. There's definitely some similarities there. Looking at the tea leaves and trying to figure out what's going on. So yeah, really great to have her on.
Yeah, if I encourage anyone to listen back, it was a tight 60 minutes, but packed full of information. And Erin did have a prediction for next year around the Ides of March. So if anyone wants to go listen back, you can get because she also predicted, I think that we talked about this, she called the 50 basis points rate cut. She said it was written in the stars. It's going to be 50 basis points. It's not going to be 25. And she called it right. So I don't know. Technical analysis in the stars. I'm curious. So go listen back. It was a good episode. always, as always, it's going to be on the podcast.
Yes. Yeah, definitely we'll be posting it soon. I think there's a little bit of a delay with getting it up, so apologies that it's not there yet, but it will be in the very near future. We have a few actually videos and a couple things we're a little behind on, but we're gonna get there shortly. We have a new system in place, and that's maybe a tease for what's coming with Leather Lounge starting next week. But yeah, so much to get into. Did want to also give a shout out to our COO Rena for being featured in a op-ed in CoinDesk this morning. Also talking about the sort of Sweet 16 of Bitcoin's white paper. A little bit more about framing it from the perspective of Bitcoin getting its driver's license and sort of entering this new era where it can now go explore all these exciting new use cases that are happening. And definitely we'll get that pinned from CoinDesk that tweeted it out. But she asks and answers some pretty cool questions about one of the news stories that came out earlier this week was that Bitcoin ETFs now exceed 1 million BTC in holdings. And, for one, that's great, that Bitcoin is getting quote unquote adoption, but is that the right type of adoption that we want in terms of, it's not self-custody, it's just Bitcoin that's kind of just sitting there. It's not deployed in DeFi or any, interesting applications. It's just being held. And, Rena, kind of asked some questions about, how can Bitcoin maintain this decentralized ethos while absorbing billions in institutional capital? And, for those of us that are building on Bitcoin, this is a big challenge that we face, right? Is like, how can we keep Bitcoin, lowercase Bitcoin and uppercase Bitcoin permissionless and resilient, even as it becomes mainstream and gets further integrated into kind of traditional financial systems. So really good piece kind of reflecting on Bitcoin's past 16 years and maybe what the next 16 years of Bitcoin might look like. One thing I do also want to mention before we kind of move into some of the industry news of the week is all of this Pizza Pets excitement. We posted about it the other day, but Kate, maybe I can throw it to you and you can talk a little bit more about maybe give a little preview on what our plans are with Pizza Pets next week.
Yeah, so we are super pumped. We're partnering with the Pizza Ninjas Ordinals Project. They are launching their Pizza Pets game, which is basically the Bitcoin version of Tamagotchi, which is so much fun when you really read into how they're looking to deploy this game. But yeah, Leather has partnered with them, and we have a bunch of spots that we're going to be giving out to our Leatherhood community. So starting next week, if you're in our Discord, on our Zeely, or here on X, we're going to be doing a week long of fun giveaways in order to claim one of these precious pizza pets. Yeah, so the gist of the game is you have to keep the pet alive on chain. If it dies, it's gone for good. And if you make it past a certain amount of time, if you can basically inscribe it into survival, it will live on forever. So it's going to be a super engaging game. I think it's going to be so much fun. I'm personally saving up because you have to pay to keep it alive to do certain actions. So yeah, next week on our Discord, which is discord.gg/leatherwallet, we're going to be doing some giveaways in there, on our Zeely page, and on our Leather X handle. So definitely keep your notifications on. It's going to be a fun week giving these away for sure.
Yeah, I'm very excited because we are going to have multiple opportunities to win one throughout the entire week. Some, a lot of the other partners that sort of partnered up with the Pizza Pets, they're like NFT collections that are kind of allocating some for their own holders. But we're not an NFT collection, right? Leather is a little bit different. So very cool that we're going to be able to have so many opportunities for our users to potentially win some Pizza Pets. So very exciting stuff. Stay tuned. We're going to be kicking that off on Monday, I believe. So you won't have to wait too long. But yeah, going to be very exciting.
One last thing I'll add about it, because you and I were talking about this today, Brandon, is how cool it's going to be if you're playing this game while using Leather, because we actively show like recursive inscriptions within the wallet. So you don't have to go click through basically to see the inscription on another website. You can just open your Leather wallet and see the health and status of your pizza pet, which just kind of, I think it gives you a little bit of an edge in this game if you're using Leather.
Yeah, that is a very good point. So even if you have multiple pizza pets, you can just open up Leather, and because inscriptions are rendered in real time, you can see exactly what the status is. Yeah, without exactly what you said, without having to click into things. I think it's going to also be very interesting. We'll get into the Memento Mori mint when things on the L1 got extremely expensive, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see, how that fares with. What if it becomes really expensive to inscribe to maintain your pizza pet's health? It's going to be very interesting. I think it's a super cool experiment. What if we see this huge wave of fees that make it like very cost prohibitive to keep your pizza pet alive, and you have to choose between, keeping your pizza pet alive versus paying like $100 for like an inscription if fees are high. It's going to be very interesting dynamic. So very excited to see what comes from that. But shout out to the Pizza Ninjas. Shout out to Mega Punks. We have done several things with both of those collections. So very cool that they themselves are collaborating together on pizza pets. It's going to be very exciting. Well, let's get into some Bitcoin news. We already mentioned Bitcoin ETFs exceeding 1 million Bitcoin holdings. Let's go back. I already mentioned it at the top because it was such an exciting event and something that our community has been waiting so long for. But let's talk a little bit about the Stacks Nakamoto launch. It's here. We did a really fun space. For me, it was very early at 6 a.m. So I was trying to be awake and represent Trust Machines as best as I could on the Stacks town hall that happened at 6 a.m. my time on Tuesday to celebrate. But Stacks Nakamoto officially kicked off, I guess, depending on where your time zone is, either Monday night, Tuesday morning, and Stacks Nakamoto is here. So with Stacks Nakamoto, we see a number of upgrades coming to the Bitcoin L2, and that's really one of the bigger things is that with Nakamoto being activated, it really does make Stacks much more aligned with kind of what you would think of is a Bitcoin L2 in terms of that 100% Bitcoin finality, a lot of the security budget of Bitcoin being inherited by Stacks, and of course fast blocks, the ability to send somebody any Stacks token, Stacks or any Stacks token, or do any DeFi action on Stacks and have it be completed in 5 to 10 seconds versus, sometimes 40 minutes at least or more, like we've seen with some Bitcoin blocks lately. It's just incredible, the amount of improvements that makes to the user experience on Stacks.
Yeah, it's a huge win. So I've been around the Stacks ecosystem for a while. It's been my preferred chain for a long time just because of the Bitcoin ethos. It uses proof of burn mechanism, and everything that you just mentioned about adopting the security of Bitcoin. So this has been so long awaited, and I woke up Tuesday morning just to a slew of messages and activity on Twitter. I mean, X. And you did great on that morning call. I know that was early for you, but it's exciting times. Such exciting times.
Yeah, it was certainly worth it to get up early to celebrate, because it's been something that, the entire community has been waiting literal years for, right? I remember when I first joined Trust Machines, it was at the beginning of 2023 in January. And just a couple weeks prior to me joining was when I was following Manib, and he published the Nakamoto white paper and talked about this big plan, for Stacks and what it was going to mean for the entire Bitcoin ecosystem. So, for me, I resonate with it because it's sort of been something that, throughout the entire course of my journey at Trust Machines has been something that this community has been waiting for this whole time. So it really starts, the beginning of this new era. We called it kind of Bitcoin season 3 the other day on the leather handle. And I think that that really resonates, right? Bitcoin season 2 is kind of kicking off at the beginning of this year with all these new Bitcoin L2s that were coming up. And, with this kind of new Bitcoin season 3, I think I'm the only one saying this, by the way. I don't think anybody else is calling it season 3, but how I sort of see it is, now we're going to start to see some actual winners emerge amongst these, dozens or maybe even hundreds of Bitcoin L2s that, started at the beginning of this year. And Stacks has been, around for several years already, right? And now it has this big upgrade. So it has a little bit of that first mover advantage. And it's definitely going to be interesting to see now what comes, with all these new improvements to the network, and especially with SBTC right around the corner. All the just exciting things that we're going to see with new DeFi, just new apps, and all just new excitement and new activity on the network. So definitely very exciting stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a relatively small cohort of builders and community members that have been sticking around with Stacks for the past few years, developing and engaging with the community, because you had to be patient enough to deal with the long block times. And I mean, to be honest, a lot of people are in crypto for faster transaction speeds, and they were not willing to make the compromise that many of the people in Stacks were willing to make. It's a trade-off. Bitcoin's decentralization is a core pillar, and a lot of people are attracted to Stacks and Bitcoin because of that. So, but now we have fast blocks, and so it's just going to unlock a massive flood of new people, new users, new developers, hashtag Solana speeds and all of this, but it has that Bitcoin finality. So I like that. Season 3 of Bitcoin is here. It really is it's a huge unlock. It's a new era.
Yeah. And the improvements to DeFi as well, because of those longer block times, when you execute a trade, on DeFi, right? Maybe you're trying to buy Stacks or Bitcoin or, anything.
Yeah.
You don't know what the price is going to be 40 minutes from now. And it could have crashed and it could have spiked. And there's just all these unknowns with, executing a trade on Bitcoin speeds. So, you usually see like slippage of like 4%, 5%, that's sometimes quoted when you're doing any sort of trade on Stacks. And now you're going to see a huge reduction in that, because that trade is now going to settle almost instantly. So it's just going to really be a huge improvement for traders. Even traders of size, right? Like for institutions that might be coming into the space that maybe want to do some of this activity, they probably wouldn't have really been very interested prior to this upgrade, right? If they're thinking of 4% slippage, that's just not realistic. So just the fact that we have these unlocks through fast blocks is just going to make a huge difference for anybody doing any kind of activity on the network.
Yeah, well, speaking of activity and adoption, what's going on in Bitcoin ETF land?
Yeah, well, let's see. We did mention, so Bitcoin ETFs exceeding 1 million BTC in holdings. I think it's very interesting. How I'm interested, for you guys, we talked about kind of what I think Rena talked about on the CoinDesk article. I pinned it as well to the space, but I'm curious how you guys feel about, this much passive on-chain Bitcoin is sort of just sitting there and it can never be deployed into DeFi and L2s. And is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? How do you feel about, the fact that all this Bitcoin is just kind of sitting in ETFs and is just not being held or, in self-custody or anything like that?
Kate, you want to take it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's both good and bad, right? I mean, the fact that there is, this level of institutional interest in Bitcoin is obviously a win for Bitcoin. But obviously here's we're like builders and supporters of doing other things in the ecosystem, it makes it a little tricky. So, I mean, I'm actually unsure, but if, once like SBTC is launched, is this a bridge that can help, or is it's kind of like an ETF, like you're locked up, there's not really much wiggle room?
I don't think there is much wiggle room because, like, you can't, if you have an ETF in BlackRock, I don't think you can go to BlackRock and you can say, hey, can you convert this to like on chain Bitcoin and can I withdraw it on chain? Like, I don't think that those types of redemption mechanisms are possible. I don't even know if they're possible for like really large institutions that kind of get involved with it. So yeah, I think it's like once it's there, it's sort of stuck. And I don't think you have a redemption process where you can sort of move them on chain. They are on chain, but as a investor in these ETFs, I don't think you have the option to like take back your on chain Bitcoin. I think you would just have to sell the ETF and then buy Bitcoin separately. So yeah, I think it's a great option for those that want just the price exposure to BTC, the asset, but not to Bitcoin, the network.
Yeah, I think it depends on where you are in the world. And to your point, if you want exposure to the price appreciation, if it's a store of value to you, then you're fine holding an ETF in your Schwab account or whatever, because then you have that exposure and that's all you need. But there are so many other places in the world, especially as Alex Gladstein points out in Check Your Financial Privilege, where Bitcoin is functional and it is used as, cryptocurrency money, as Satoshi envisioned it. And Bitcoin will only survive if if there's action on chain, right? So it is a little bit of an existential threat, especially when the block rewards run out. So I know we're like 100 years away from that, but theoretically, if everyone is just holding paper Bitcoin and you say like, okay, I'm going to trade you some of my paper Bitcoin for this, and it's not actually happening on chain, then the network usage the decentralization will be compromised. So, how do we measure the two trade-offs, right? Bitcoin ETFs make it easier for adoption, so we're getting more people with exposure to Bitcoin, but it could diminish the decentralization because the chain isn't getting as much use. So, yeah, maybe not. It's not maybe not an issue right now, but it is an existential threat depending on how things develop over the next century.
Well, maybe that's a good segue. Speaking of existential threats to Bitcoin, we can talk, depending on how you think about it, we can talk a little bit about MicroStrategy's new plan to acquire 42 billion Bitcoin. And why 42? Because 21 plus 21. So on Wednesday, basically, MicroStrategy announced a $42 billion capital plan, which includes a $21 billion equity offering and a target of raising $21 billion in fixed income securities over a 3-year period. So basically, MicroStrategy wants to acquire $42 billion. I wish it was Microsoft, but no. $42 billion of Bitcoin over 3 years. And if you kind of compound that out, $42 billion over 3 years is $38.36 million per day, which is quite a lot of money. And with around 450 Bitcoin mined daily at today's prices, that would basically mean they would be acquiring nearly all the Bitcoin that is mined each day. So, I mean, supply and demand economics, it just, it wouldn't make sense for the price to not go up, I think, if this did end up realistically happening. Year to date, their Bitcoin yield is 17.8%. During this quarter, Q3 2024, they just had their sort of financial earnings call. That's where they shared this plan. There was 5.1%, so a little bit more flat. The summer doldrums affected them as well. But they have revised their sort of annual BTC yield target to 6% to 10% for 2025 through 2027. So they believe that the price of Bitcoin is going to go up. And yeah, I guess we will see what happens if this plan ends up going through and they end up acquiring $38 million of Bitcoin every day. We will see how that goes.
When will they announce the results?
It's a good question. I'm not sure if there's sort of like a voting process. I know MicroStrategy works pretty different compared to a lot of other public companies where Saylor kind of controls most of the decision making there. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like they're putting the ball in motion, but in terms of a timeline for when this actually begins, I'm not actually sure.
It's crazy.
At some point, it just seems. Go ahead, John.
Oh, well, I was only going to say that, like, how crazy is it that you're so far in first place and yet you're not first enough?
I was going to say
ahead,
at some point we want to be buying MicroStrategy stock over Bitcoin with this plan. It's crazy. I also love how Bitcoiners do math. It's just 21 plus 21. Even Mani was commenting how he chose the Stacks block and he's like 8 plus 6 plus 7, 21. It's funny.
Yeah, I almost wonder though, the Manib thing. I wonder if it's sort of like the decision I don't think was, oh, we need to find a number that corresponds with 21. I think it was sort of like, oh, it's like a happy coincidence. Yeah, I wonder if it was kind of the same thing there. Yeah, it's just interesting.
Or written in the stars.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, we'll have to consult Erin on maybe the importance of the number 42, which has a lot of meaning for for some folks that that might have read what is it, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Yeah, so speaking of Erin, let's talk a little bit about Memento Mori, which is the rune that broke Bitcoin this week and minted out. We talked about it last week, but it happened, it minted out, and we did see Bitcoin fees on the L1 spike up to nearly 1,000 sats per VByte as people were rushing in to try to mint this rune. For those that maybe are out of the loop, this is a rune that was minted or etched by Casey and Erin. Casey is, of course, the creator of ordinals, the creator of runes, and Casey and Erin host the Hell Money podcast. They ended up airdropping 50% of the Memento Mori rune to their Patreon subscribers, and then the remaining 50% was available for anybody to mint out that wanted to pay the astronomical Bitcoin fees. I'm wondering, did Sean or Kate, did you guys try to mint any Memento Mori this week?
No, I looked at it, but I got a little scared by those fees.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. We tweeted out on Trust Machine's handle. Sure would have been nice if something like this was on Bitcoin layers, right? It would have been so much easier, so much cheaper potentially to do some of these things. I'm very excited to hear more about some of the plans that I think like Bitflow has shared with being able to bridge runes onto Stacks and being able to sort of trade them there. That's going to be very interesting. But yeah, I mean, it's just a good reminder, right? People don't talk too much about Bitcoin L2s until the fees go up. And then when the fees go up, they feel the pain and they feel the need for L2s. And it was just another reminder of that this week.
Brandon, can I ask you about how rune names come about? Because this is something that Erin talked about on the show yesterday, is that they had to wait for this. I mean, coincidentally, this rune became available around Halloween time. So yeah, how does the naming of runes come about? What's that system?
Yeah, so the way that runes works, this was sort of designed by Casey, is when runes launched, you could not create a rune that had a name that was shorter than 13 characters. So that's why instead of seeing dog, for example, right, they shorten it to dog, but the actual name of it is dog go to the moon. So it can kind of hit that 13 character mark. And then I'm not sure the exact kind of cadence, but runes, has been out for maybe around 6 months. Maybe it's every 3-4 months or so. They knock down, a number. So then 12 characters opened up, and then now 11 characters have opened up. Spaces don't count towards the character length. So now we have memento mori. And yeah, that basically, when runes was first launched, you could not have created a memento mori token because it was not 13 characters or more. So over time, we'll see, less and less character lengths being enabled for creation. And Casey basically did that so that people couldn't immediately just, grab A, B, C, D, right? That's just boring. He wanted to encourage creative names on the protocol. And it's kind of his way of sort of doing that. So over time, we'll see less and less and less characters required, I think, until it just gets to one, and then you can create whatever you want. That'll certainly be interesting, when that happens. But yeah, that was sort of the reasoning behind the length of characters for rune token names.
What a great explanation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Let's get into kind of one of the things that I was very passionate about last week that I wanted to sort of follow up on, which was Microsoft's Bitcoin proposal. So we talked about it last week that basically Microsoft is allowing their board, or sorry, not their board, it's whoever is a shareholder, to vote on this proposition of the assessment of investing in Bitcoin. So basically, Microsoft is putting it in the shareholders' hands for a vote on whether or not they should look into the option of putting some of their balance sheet into Bitcoin. And this week, the voting opened up. I was able to actually log on to my Fidelity account and vote yes, which was cool. I did my part, but I wanted to. There's a really good prospectus that is actually in the proposal that was written, I guess, by the Microsoft shareholders, whoever it was, on the justification for why they think this should happen. I wanted to read one of the quotes here, which is very interesting and goes back to MicroStrategy that we were talking about earlier. So it says, MicroStrategy, which, like Microsoft, is a technology company, but unlike Microsoft, holds Bitcoin on its balance sheet, has had its stock outperform Microsoft stock this year by 313%, despite doing only a fraction of the business that Microsoft has done. And they're not alone. The institutional and corporate adoption of Bitcoin is becoming more commonplace. Microsoft's second largest shareholder, BlackRock, offers its clients a Bitcoin ETF. So, the proof is in the numbers, right? And it talked a little bit about in the prospectus about just the fiduciary duty that public companies have, right? If there's this opportunity to put some of your balance sheet in Bitcoin and potentially get a 313% increase in your stock price, like has happened with MicroStrategy, then you have an obligation as a public company to do that, right? So if you don't look into something like this, are you fulfilling your fiduciary duty as a public company? And that's a really great question. So I hope that it goes through. I don't know if it will because the board recommendation was no, but still very cool at least to see, that some of these things are moving in the right direction. I think just the fact that it is put on, on the ballot in terms of shareholders being able to vote for this or not is a huge step in the right direction. So we'll have to see what happens. And there's this relevant tweet from Anthony Pompliano that came out yesterday about Microsoft's stock performance. And this year, Microsoft stock has actually underperformed the S&P 500. And in contrast, Meta, who isn't really related, but just in his tweet, Meta is at a 70% increase in stock performance. S&P is at 22%, and Microsoft is at 16%. So interesting, that the perspective we hear a lot with Microsoft and AI and all the investments that they're making in the space. But it's just interesting to look at these numbers and to see somebody like MicroStrategy so so greatly outperforming them in terms of their stock price, which as a public company and they have many shareholders to answer to, right? And yeah, just a very, very interesting dynamic, I guess, that that Microsoft has compared to some of these other companies right now.
Definitely. And it's great for the education aspect too, because now anyone who has voting rights, if they don't already have a Bitcoin position or at least an opinion, they're more likely to do a little bit of research. And anyone who researches Bitcoin in earnest, like most people, are going to kind of have their minds blown and realize I need to get off of zero. And so do most companies. And even if it's like a 1%, like 1% is a no-brainer. Anything over 5%, sure, yeah, vote for it. But like 1%, no-brainer.
Yeah, we talked about this last week, but yeah, for those that miss it, even if they were to invest 5% of their uninvested cash or just like the actual, cash that they have on hand, 5% of a Microsoft investment would still be less than what most of the public companies that do have Bitcoin are currently holding. So even if Microsoft put in 5% as an investment, they would still be behind Block and Tesla and MicroStrategy and a lot of the Bitcoin mining companies like Marathon. So even 5% is not enough for them to dominate in public company holdings. So very, very interesting stuff.
I'm curious if either of you know when the board is, or if they do vote no, what is like the FUD reason? Is it due to volatility? Is it sort of like a political statement? Like Brandon, as you said, they do have a fiduciary duty if they're seeing that Bitcoin is like performing. So yeah, what is this FUD reason?
Yeah, I'm not really sure, to be honest. When you're looking at sort of the prospectus, it kind of lays out this quote, and I pinned my tweet for those that want to take a look. I copy pasted the whole prospectus because I think it's a really good read. But it just has like a what the board recommends, and it just says like for or against. So it just has what they recommend, and it doesn't really give a reason why. I think that it's kind of just like it's laziness. Like from my perspective, it's they don't think, they're not doing the research. It's not like an intellectually honest answer to say against, right? Because this is not a yes or no vote on should we invest in Bitcoin. It's a yes or no vote on should we look into the possibility of investing in Bitcoin. So to vote no on that is a very lazy thing to do, right? I don't know if it's just because they don't want to they're so against Bitcoin that they don't even want to invest the money that it would require to hire researchers to do the research. I don't really know. I guess I can only speculate, but yeah, I think it's a very intellectually dishonest thing, personally, to vote no on research, right? You should be looking into this as a fiduciary responsibility. So I would vote yes, and I did vote yes, but yeah, I'm not exactly sure why the vote no.
I think it's hard for people when you have doubled down on something and made up your mind that Bitcoin is bad. The humble pie that you have to eat when you do come around and recognize, like, okay, I was wrong on this. Like, that kind of mental flexibility, I don't think it's that common with a lot of people. It's really hard to hit that, for your ego to take that blow. Like, oh, I was wrong about it for so long, but at some point you got to come around.
I think it's still just Microsoft especially focuses so much on ESG and that whole conversation also. And there's it's still in the mainstream eye, Bitcoin is bad for the environment, even though as Bitcoiners we know that there are so many examples of how Bitcoin is great for renewable energy and all the good things. Like we know that has been thoroughly debunked, but I think that is still very much kind of the mainstream thought of Bitcoin. And I think Microsoft, if they did do it, would experience a pretty big blowback from those communities, even though it's not really warranted. So maybe they're also just trying to they don't want to deal with that, right? They don't want to deal with that blowback from the ESG. They don't want to be the ones that are like, starting that fight, I guess, or starting that conversation. But it's all speculation, I guess. I don't know for sure what they think.
So what's next week looking like?
Well, if you're in the US election is just a few days away, and we have covered so much political news this year. So much. I wanted to pull some final kind of numbers since this is the last Good for Bitcoin show before we know who the next US president is. Hopefully, I guess. Hopefully there's no craziness that happens with, I don't even know. I don't even want to speculate. But we wanted to look at, because we have looked at some of the prediction markets, what the final numbers are. So we talked, I think last week, about Polymarket and it being a little bit higher than some of the other prediction markets out there. They currently have Trump sitting at a 61% chance. Predictit has Trump at a 54% chance. Kalshi has Trump at a 56% chance. So across the board in the prediction markets, we are seeing Trump being favored to win. We'll have to see if there's just a bias of crypto people, using Polymarket or and these other markets or not. But we will find out in just a few days. So next week, next Friday, we will see, I guess, who the next U.S. president is. And yeah, I guess we'll find out how that goes. It's going to be an interesting week.
We'll see if Freddie, aka Sean, is about to go off on Polymarket.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just kidding, Sean.
That's swinger out here.
Yeah, we will see if the Polymarket whale was right or not. That's certainly a lot of money that he is either going to win or lose. Yeah, that'll be interesting. Yeah, so much to look forward to next week beyond politics. So much with Leather, doing all these Pizza Pets giveaways. We're very excited for that. Stay tuned. Make sure you're following Leather. Make sure you have the notifications turned on. Make sure that you've joined our Discord. Make sure that you've joined our Zeely. So many opportunities to win. It's going to be a big week there. And I believe next week we will also be kicking off a new date and time for Leather Lounge. So we'll be announcing that next week, kind of to coincide with that season 3. It's going to be season 3 of Leather Lounge, and very excited to do that. That's going to be a little bit earlier for me on the Pacific time, but I think it's going to be very helpful for those that are in kind of our Asian time zones, European time zones, so they can join in a little bit more frequently. Last week we had Koa on the show to join, and we had that at an earlier time, and that went really well. So looking forward to a new date and time there. But we will see you all next week on Good for Bitcoin. And I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about. So looking forward to that. And yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. Again, just some shout outs for some folks that are in the audience that are here so frequently every week. Of course, we have to shout out Cobby. I see Mr. Wagme down there. We got Liz, we got Landy. Wow, we have so many people. Thank you everybody for tuning in, for listening in. We appreciate it. This will be posted on Spotify shortly. So we are also recording this and posting it to your favorite podcast platform. And yeah, we will see you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening. We record Good for Bitcoin live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on X. Please follow us at Trust Machines Co. if you would like to listen and engage with us live. Visit us at trustmachines.co for all the latest Bitcoin news. We'll see you next week.